He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He just sat there, tethered to a tree, eyes locked on the empty stretch of road like he was still waiting for someone who promised to return. Maybe 4, 5 months old. Gaunt, his thin frame soaked from the storm that had rolled through the night before. His ribs etched shadows beneath matted patches of fur. One ear folded down, limp. A rope dug deep into his neck, worn and ragged, pulled so tight that it forced his head low. Still, he never looked away. Not when my truck crunched to a stop on the gravel, not when I opened the door, not even when I softly called to him. His gaze stayed fixed on the horizon like every passing car might finally bring back the one who left him behind. I approached slowly, hands held out, voice gentle. "Hey, buddy, you all alone out here?" No flinch, no growl, just those eyes. Hollow, drained, still searching. I'd seen that kind of look before, in war zones, in disaster shelters, in the mirror on the bad days. I dropped to a crouch, letting the mud soak through my jeans. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." He didn't react, but he didn't try to run either. Just waited. Like waiting was the only thing he remembered how to do. Beside him sat a rusted metal bowl, bone dry, a ragged towel frozen stiff in the mud, like someone had staged a lie of care. Whoever had tied him here had done it deliberately, like they wanted it to seem like they'd be back. But they wouldn't. And deep down, I think he already knew that. I dug into my pocket, pulled out the piece of jerky I always kept for strays, tore it in half and laid it down on the ground between us. That was when he blinked. Just once. Then again. His legs quivered beneath him, but he didn't move toward it. I gently set the other half by his paw. "Take your time," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." A gust of wind stirred the pine needles around us. His head dipped slightly, nostrils flaring. Then slowly, cautiously, he gave the jerky a tentative lick. And after that, he looked at me. That's when I saw it. Not fear, not distrust. Hope. Fragile, faded, but alive. I drew a breath, reached for the rope. "It's okay now," I said softly. "You don't have to wait anymore." And that was how I met Axel, left in the middle of nowhere, still holding on to the dream that someone might come back. From that moment on, I swore I'd be the one who never left. He let me undo the knots, never pulled away, never made a sound. Just stood there, perfectly still, as I worked the frayed rope from his neck. The skin underneath was raw, rubbed raw and pink. I winced when I saw it. He didn't even blink, like pain was just another layer of life he'd learned to ignore. When I finally slipped the rope free, he didn't bolt, didn't run for the woods. He just sat in the dirt and looked up at me like he didn't know what to do with freedom. I picked him up. He was too light, nothing but fur stretched over bone. Not a struggle, not a peep. He rested his head against my chest as I carried him to the truck, his breathing shallow and slow. I placed him gently on the old blanket in the passenger seat and cranked the heat. He didn't lift his head, didn't shift. But when I closed the door and glanced back through the rearview mirror, I saw his eyes watching me. One hand on the wheel, the other resting softly on his side, I murmured, "You're safe now. I got you." He blinked once, then closed his eyes. Not from trust, from sheer exhaustion. I drove straight to Elisa's clinic. She met me at the door, gloves already on. "Is this him?" she asked, peeking into the cab. "Yeah, found him tied up near Forest Hollow. No homes, no signs, just him." She gently touched his ear. "He's freezing. Dehydrated too." I nodded. "He's been surviving, but he's empty." We brought him inside and laid him on the exam table. Elisa and her tech moved quickly. IV fluids, temperature checks, warm towels. Axel didn't resist, didn't flinch. He just surrendered. not out of peace, but because there was nothing left in him to fight. He's not gone, Elisa said, her voice low. But he's done. For now. I stood there, my hand on the table, heart cracking. Someone left him there to be forgotten. She looked me dead in the eye. Not anymore. That night I stayed in the recovery room, thin mattress beside his crate, sleep nowhere near me. I watched his chest rise and fall, every breath a fragile promise he hadn't made but still kept. Around 3 in the morning, he stirred, eyes opened, found mine, and slowly, cautiously, he slid his paw through the bars and placed it on my hand. Held it. In the morning, Elisa brought coffee and a quiet nod. He made it through the night. That's something. Axel was awake, barely moving, but watching, not out of fear this time, but awareness. He was trying to figure it out, trying to understand why, this time, no one had left. Elisa knelt down, opened the crate door slowly, and offered him a small bowl of chicken and rice. He looked at her hand, then at me, like he needed permission. Go ahead, buddy, I whispered. It's yours. He sniffed, hesitated, then tasted. One bite, another, then a rhythm. Slow, guarded, but hungry. When he finished, Elisa exhaled. He's got appetite. That's a win. I nodded, but my chest ached. There was something in the way he moved, so careful, like in his mind, he was still bound to that tree. He doesn't know he's free yet, I murmured. Give it time, Elisa replied. That afternoon, I brought him home. He stepped through the front door like it was a trap. 2 paces in, and he froze. Didn't sniff, didn't wag, just stood there, like he expected a yank on his collar any second. I gave him space, kept my hands to myself unless he came close. Left the back door open so he could see the sky. I placed a water bowl by the couch, laid his blanket in the corner. He curled up on the floor, not the blanket, not the couch, just cold hard wood, watching the door. Hours passed like that. After sunset, I sat on the rug, cross-legged, and whispered, I know what it's like to wait for someone who's never coming back. He didn't move, but his ears twitched. Then slowly, inch by inch, he crawled toward me, laid his head on my boot, let out the deepest exhale I'd ever heard. That was the first time I cried. Not messy, not loud, just a single tear sliding down my cheek because I realized he wasn't scared of me. He was scared of hope. For days, Axel never left my side. Room to room he followed, quiet, always watching. If I paused too long, he'd sit behind me, silent, waiting, like he expected me to vanish any second. At night, he wouldn't sleep unless I was beside him. I rolled out a blanket near his bed. He'd inch closer until his head rested on my shoulder. If I shifted, he'd jolt awake, eyes wide, breath quick. It wasn't fear of the dark. It was fear of being left in it. On the 4th night, a storm thundered through. Lightning cracked. Rain battered the windows. Axel jumped up, tail tucked, gasping. He darted behind the couch and wouldn't budge. I sat with him, whispered soft reassurances, stroked his fur. Still, he trembled. That's when it hit me. He'd heard storms before. But back then, he was alone, tied up, waiting, and no one came. I pulled my blanket to the floor and laid beside him, heart pressed to his chest until the shaking stopped. The next morning, something shifted. We stepped into the backyard. The grass was damp, the sky still gray. I expected hesitation, but Axel took a step, then another. Then, like something inside him snapped loose, he ran. Not fast, not far. Just a clumsy circle around the yard, tongue out, ears bouncing. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. You're getting it, Axel, I said. You're learning what it means to be alive. Later, he curled up on the couch beside me. Not the floor, the couch. He laid his head in my lap with no hesitation. I brushed some leaves from his fur and whispered, "You don't have to wait by the door anymore." He looked up at me, his eyes soft, filled with something that hadn't been there before. Maybe for the very first time, he believed me, believed that not everyone would hurt him, believed that not every promise was just noise. That single glance from Axel, it changed something in both of us. From that day forward, he began to come alive, not in a sudden rush, but gently, like pieces of a long-lost song, slowly returning, note by fragile note. It started small, the twitch of his ears every time I opened the fridge, a slight shift in his body, alert and curious, as if some part of him remembered what it meant to want. Then came the slow, uncertain tail wags whenever I walked into the room, like he was testing the waters of joy. And one day he barked, just once, a sharp sound when a delivery guy knocked at the door. It startled us both, that burst of sound from a dog who had been nothing but silence. But it wasn't fear. It was Axel learning that the world could be loud and not dangerous. That footsteps didn't always mean abandonment. That doors opening didn't always mean someone was leaving forever. We fell into a rhythm, our own quiet dance. I got up at 6 a.m. every morning. He would follow, his paws soft on the hardwood, curling up near the coffee machine, like he had appointed himself the morning supervisor. We took short walks. He never strayed far. In fact, he stayed so close it felt like we were tethered by something deeper than fear, something more like hope. One morning Elise called. Her voice was warm as ever. "How's our miracle dog?" she asked. I smiled, looking down at him curled beside me. "He's getting there." She hesitated before asking, "Think he's ready for a visit?" "Visit where?" I asked, caught off guard. "There's a center downtown," she said, "for veterans with PTSD. I volunteer there once a month. You should bring him. Nothing formal, just to sit." I looked at Axel, asleep again, with his head on my boot, like he always did. "I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted. It was the most honest thing I'd said in a while. There was a pause, then, softly, "Maybe you both are. More than you think." I thought about it all day. That night I found myself talking to Axel, my voice low in the dark room. "I lost my partner in the field," I whispered. 3 tours together, and then gone. I told myself I'd never open that part of me again. Axel didn't move, but I swear to God he was listening. "You showed up tied to a tree, still waiting, like you hadn't given up. And maybe neither have I." So we went. The center was quiet, nestled behind a row of old brick buildings. No signs, just a plain room. Folding chairs arranged in a circle. Men and women, some with canes, some with wounds only they could feel, sat in silence. I didn't know what I expected. But when Axel walked in, he didn't freeze. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight to a man sitting alone in the back, older, silent, his shoulders heavy, and gently laid his head on the man's knee. The man looked down, startled. His eyes widened. Then slowly, he closed them. "He knows," the man whispered. That was the moment I realized Axel hadn't just survived. He understood. Word spread faster than I imagined. Within weeks, they invited us back. Then again, soon Axel and I had a standing visit every Tuesday. No tricks, no tasks. We just showed up, sat in the room, stayed. And somehow that was enough. The veterans noticed. They began to greet him by name. Some scratched behind his ears without saying a word. Others gave a slight nod. Axel never demanded attention. He simply offered presence, and he gave it without expecting anything in return. One afternoon, a younger vet, mid-30s with scars on his arms and rage in his eyes, walked into the room. He froze when he saw Axel, just stared, for a long time. "My unit had a dog like that," he finally said. I waited. "She didn't make it," he added, voice barely above a whisper. "I never really got over it." Axel walked over slow and steady and sat beside him. The man didn't reach out, didn't even look at him, but he didn't move away either. They sat there like that, silent, still, side by side. That night, the man found me in the parking lot. "Where'd you get him?" he asked. "I found him," I replied, "tied to a tree, still waiting." He nodded, then looked away, voice tight. "That's what PTSD feels like you're tied to something invisible, and every time you try to move forward, it yanks you back." I didn't know what to say, but Axel did. He stepped forward, pressed his head against the man's thigh. The man froze, then crumbled, dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around Axel, sobbing into his fur. That was the moment I stopped calling Axel my rescue dog, because he wasn't just rescued, he was a rescuer. He didn't bark commands, didn't patrol fences. He didn't need to. All he had to do was stay. And in a world that teaches you to run from everything, pain, fear, love, staying means everything. Weeks became months. Axel grew stronger, more grounded. He walked into every room with quiet purpose, never in a rush. He waited for someone who needed him. And someone always did. His calm disarmed even the hardest hearts. Then one day, the center asked if we'd be part of a new pilot program, therapy dogs and one-on-one sessions with veterans who hadn't responded to traditional treatment. Our first appointment was with Roy, early 50s, former infantry, hadn't spoken in 6 months. His file read, severe withdrawal, refuses eye contact, history of night terrors. I brought Axel in and sat quietly. Roy didn't even glance at us. Axel paused at the door, then crossed the room, slow and silent. He didn't demand. He simply sat 3 feet away, facing Roy. 15 minutes of stillness. Then Roy shifted. Axel did too, just slightly, mirroring him. 5 more minutes. Then quietly, Roy muttered, "He's patient." I held my breath. Axel tilted his head. Roy looked up, met his eyes, and for the first time in over a year, he smiled. "He reminds me of the one we lost," he said. "She waited for me too." Roy reached out, hand trembling, touched Axel's chest. Axel didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just stayed. Afterward, the therapist pulled me aside, almost whispering, "Do you know how rare that is? Roy hasn't touched anyone, not even me, but that dog, he let him in." And that's when I knew. Axel didn't just understand pain. He recognized it, honored it. He didn't try to fix it. He just sat with it until it wasn't so heavy anymore. And in that silent companionship, people found something they had forgotten was possible. The beginning of peace. We kept going. Week after week, walking through the same doors, the faces changed. New veterans, new stories, new scars. But Axel remained, steady, still, present. Then one afternoon, we met Natalie, early 20s. Medical discharge after an IED left her with chronic nerve damage. She used a cane, rarely spoke. But that day she arrived early, sitting alone against the wall. Eyes far away. Axel saw her, trotted over. Calm, gentle, certain. Without hesitation, he lay down beside her, shoulder to shoulder, head low, body soft. Not in front of her cane, but beside it. He didn't ask to be noticed. He simply was. She didn't react at first, just stared ahead. Then, her hand moved. Not to pet, just to rest on him, like she needed something warm that wouldn't disappear. After the session, she asked if she could walk him out. I handed her the leash. They moved slowly in sync. When we reached my truck, she paused. "I used to have a shepherd," she said quietly, "before deployment." I nodded. She was like Axel, always calm, always watching. She looked down at him, then up at me. "I haven't touched another dog since she died, until now." Axel leaned against her leg. His tail swept gently across the pavement. She knelt, kissed his head, and whispered, "Thank you for waiting for me." That night, Axel lay at my feet on the porch, head on my boot like always. I watched the stars appear one by one. I thought about every soul he had touched, not through training, not through commands, but through presence, through quiet, by reminding people that they were still worthy of love, still capable of connection, still seen. And maybe, just maybe, the world hadn't forgotten them after all. One morning I woke to find Axel sitting by the door. He wasn't pacing, he wasn't whining. He just sat by the door, still as a statue, eyes fixed on the handle, like he already knew, like some part of him sensed that today was going to be different, that something important was about to begin. I walked over, stood beside him, and gently placed my hand on his back. "You ready to go?" I asked. His tail thumped once. Soft, sure, quiet certainty. We were scheduled to visit a youth shelter that morning. It would be our first time working with children instead of veterans. And even though Axel had grown into a steady healing presence for so many, I wasn't sure how he'd respond. Trauma comes in many forms, but with kids, it settles differently. It wears smaller shoes but runs deeper under the skin. Softer at the edges, heavier in the silence. The shelter director met us with a smile full of gratitude. "They've heard about Axel," she said. "We told them he's a dog who knows what it's like to be left behind." We stepped into the playroom. 10 children sat in a circle on the carpet. Some looked up, curious. Others stared down, lost in their own worlds. One girl, maybe 6 years old, sat cross-legged, hoodie pulled up over her head, her face buried in shadows. Axel didn't pause. He walked right past the noise, the toys, the volunteers, the reaching hands. He made his way through all of it, like he saw straight through to where he was needed. He stopped in front of her, sat down with his tail tucked in, and waited. 1 minute passed, then 2. Finally, she peeked out, just enough to glimpse his face. "Is he sad?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper. I knelt beside her. "He was for a long time," I said softly, "but he's learning how to feel safe again." She nodded slowly, like the idea made sense in some deep place inside her. Then she crawled forward and wrapped her tiny arms around his neck. Axel leaned in, closed his eyes, and rested his chin on her shoulder, like he'd been waiting for that hug his whole life. Later, as we were getting ready to leave, the little girl tugged at my sleeve. "Can he come back?" she asked. "Some of the kids here, they need him, like I did." I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled. "Yeah, he'll come back. I promise." Back in the truck, Axel rested his head on the armrest. His eyes were tired but peaceful. "You did good today," I whispered. "Really good." And for the first time since I'd known him, Axel licked my hand. Just once, unprompted. But I knew exactly what it meant. He understood. He'd been waiting his whole life to be someone's answer. And now he was. The anniversary came quietly, 1 year to the day since I found him, tied to a tree, alone, waiting for someone who never came back. I thought about ignoring it, pretending it was just another Tuesday, but some moments deserve to be honored. We drove back, same road, same stretch of woods. The tree was still there, scarred at its base, rope marks faint but unmistakable. The bowl and the towel were long gone, but the memory remained, thick in the air. Axel stepped out of the truck and stood still. He looked around slowly. His ears twitched. His nose lifted. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't confused. He knew exactly where we were. He walked to the tree on his own and sat. No trembling, no waiting, just stillness, just peace. I knelt beside him. "You remember, don't you?" I said. He didn't move. He just stared at the road like he used to. But this time, there was no longing in his eyes. no ache, no hope for someone who never deserved it. There was only peace. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, simple metal tag. Etched on it in quiet letters, I stayed. I tied it gently to a low branch and let it hang, catching the light and breeze. A marker, a memory, a promise kept. You're not the dog who was left behind anymore, I whispered. You're the one who stayed and kept going. Axel pressed his shoulder gently into my knee, and in that moment I knew this wasn't just his story anymore. It was ours. That night, we curled up on the porch as the sun slipped below the trees and the stars blinked into view. Axel lay at my feet like he always did, head resting on my boot, heart at ease. And I realized something I hadn't dared say out loud until now. He saved me, not with grand gestures, not by barking or guarding or chasing anything away, but by staying, by showing up, by reminding me day after day that even when love is broken, it can still be rebuilt. That presence matters. That healing happens not in leaps, but in inches, in quiet, in trust, in time. Axel's story isn't just about abandonment. It's about what comes after. After the rope is gone, after the door stays open, after someone shows up and says, I'm not going anywhere. He didn't choose to be left behind, but he chose to keep loving anyway. And that's what made him extraordinary. He didn't rescue people by doing tricks. He rescued them by staying when no one else did, by listening without words, by showing us that waiting isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do. If Axel's story touched your heart, please share it, because there are more dogs like him right now, tied up in the cold, eyes scanning the road, waiting for someone to believe they're worth saving. Be that someone. Join our Brave Paws family. Like, comment, share. Together we can change the world, one waiting heart at a time.